Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Okay, I'm going to tell the story of 3 different parrots. It's actually one story of 2 parrots and another story of 1 parrot. The story that I was told along the way in Theravada Buddhism is a story of 2 parrots. There was a parrot that, there were actually 2 parrots that were leaders of great flocks. One was the future Bodhisattva, the other was the future Devadatta, the one who would become an evil monk and try to take over from the Buddha. So there were a couple of tree branches that were rubbing against each other, starting to smoke. Seeing the signs, the wise Bodhisattva parrot cried out, "There will be a fire. We must all go. We must flee. It will be very dangerous." But the future Devadatta parrot said, "I see no problem. We are comfortable here. This is a nice abiding. We have what we need here. Why should we fly away just because of a little smoke? It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything." Those who were members of the Bodhisattva's flock took alarm with him when he said, "Go, go, there will be fire, let's go." And they rose up together and flew away to seek safety. Devadatta said, what a bunch of sillies. How ridiculous. A little smoke, what's it going to do to us? We're tougher than that. There's no problem here. And when they were asleep and paying no attention, that sparking, and the whole tree went up in flames, and all of his parrots, the 500 parrots that followed him, all perished terribly. And seeing this, the Bodhisattva and the others were very sobered. And they took note that where there is danger, one must seek shelter and safety. The shelter and safety in this material world is spiritual development, not grasping after this and that outer circumstance to be happy, to be content, to be okay, but to find our okayness somewhere completely different. There's a way in which we're already completely okay, and we can overcome our habitual inclinations to grasp at some way of being, some other something to make us okay. We can tap into real peace. And we develop our spiritual inclinations bit by bit, step by step, to reach that place of perfect peace. We reach it in stages. It doesn't happen all at once. As long as we're still grabbing on to a bigger, better piece of technology, or smaller, better piece of technology, a bigger, better TV, a nicer car, a better this, a better that, a better the other, grasping after another piece of dessert, grasping after having everything the way we want it, grasping after our opinions being followed, whatever it is that's our particular downfalls, as long as we're following those, drunk on those, we don't have as much chance of finding the real refuge, the real security and safety of the spiritual development, of finding the peace that's already here, if only we weren't making ourselves so unpeaceful. So that's the tale of 2 parrots. Here's the tale of the 1 parrot. And this is from The Seeker's Glossary of Buddhism. It's a Mahayana book. And this is illustrating the ideal of the Bodhisattva. In a thicket at the foot of the Himalayan mountains, there once lived a parrot, together with many other animals and birds. One day, a fire started in the thicket from the friction of bamboos and a strong wind, and the birds and animals were in frightened confusion. So, Laura, you might notice it's a little bit different from the essay that I read yesterday, because this is a more original source. The parrot, feeling compassion for their fright and suffering, and wishing to repay the kindness he had received in the bamboo thicket where he could shelter himself, tried to do all he could to save them. He dipped himself in a pond nearby and flew over the fire and shook off the drops of water to extinguish the fire. He repeated this diligently with a heart of compassion out of gratitude to the thicket. This spirit of kindness and self-sacrifice was noticed by a heavenly God, who came down from the sky and said to the parrot, "You have a gallant mind, but what good do you expect to accomplish by a few drops of water against this great fire?" The parrot answered, "There is nothing that cannot be accomplished by the spirit of compassion and self-sacrifice. I will try over and over again, and then over in the next life." The great God was impressed by the parrot's spirit, and together they extinguished the fire. The other telling of the story has this great God challenge the parrot and then weep tears of compassion that put out the fire. When I was looking for the page number of this book by finding a PDF of it to get down to it, I found many, many retellings of the account that had appeared in Tricycle magazine. And it was interesting because they take it more and more in the direction away from the tale as read here. So I want to share with you the background that this book offers, that it was using that story to illustrate. And this is under the, again, it's a glossary, it's a little dictionary, and it's under the word bodhisattva. So bodhisattva, Vietnamese bo tat, those who aspire to supreme enlightenment and Buddhahood for themselves and all beings. The word bodhisattva can therefore stand for realized beings, such as Avalokiteshvara or Samantabhadra, but also for anyone who has developed the Bodhi mind, the aspiration to save oneself and others. And another quote, one who aspires to the attainment of Buddhahood and devotes himself to altruistic deeds, especially deeds that cause others to attain enlightenment. Bodhisattvahood has the two aspects of self-perfection and benefiting others. The notion of the bodhisattva is already found in Theravada writings, where it refers to the historical Buddha Sakyamuni in his previous existences as they are described in the Jātakas. In Mahayana, the idea of the bodhisattva is rooted in a belief in future Buddhas who have long since existed as bodhisattvas. The Mahayana distinguishes two kinds of bodhisattvas, earthly and transcendent. Earthly bodhisattvas are persons, monks, nuns, lay people, anyone, who are distinguished from others by their compassion and altruism, as well as their striving toward the attainment of enlightenment. On the other hand, transcendent bodhisattvas have actualized the paramitas, the qualities that bring awakening, and have attained Buddhahood, but have postponed their entry into complete nirvana. They are in possession of perfect wisdom and are no longer subject to samsara. So this does not exist in Theravada. They appear in various forms in order to lead beings on the path to liberation. They are the object of the veneration of believers who see them as showers of the way and helpers in time of need. In early Buddhism, the term bodhisattva was used to identify Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, and it was assumed that only future historical Buddhas would merit this designation prior to their attainment of Buddhahood. In Mahayana, and again, this is a Mahayana reference. In Mahayana, this term was given a radical new interpretation and used as a designation for anyone aspiring to complete perfect enlightenment, that is, to Buddhahood. The entire Mahayana notion of the bodhisattva was a clear antithesis to the ideal type in early Buddhism, the Arhat, whose effort was found by Mahayanists to be self-centered and ego-based. An enormous literature developed focusing on the bodhisattva and the bodhisattva path, including such famous texts as the Bodhisattva Bhumi Sutra, Dasabhumika Sutra, and others. So then referring to artistry, statuaries, iconography, the arhats are depicted as elderly, shaven-headed monks, clad in yellow robes and holding a begging bowl or a staff. They stand stiffly with compressed lips, and their attitude seems not altogether free from strain. The bodhisattvas, by way of contrast, are all beautiful young princes. Gem-studded tiaras sparkle on their brows, while their nobly proportioned limbs are clad in light diaphanous garments of colored silk. They wear gold bracelets and strings of pearls, and around their necks hang garlands of fragrant flowers. Their expression is smiling, their pose is graceful and easy. These splendors do not indicate that the bodhisattvas are laymen. They symbolize their status as heirs of the Buddha, the king of the Dharma, and the untold spiritual riches to which they will one day succeed when, in the final stages of their career, they are themselves consecrated to Buddhahood. And then it goes on to note further, in Mahayana, a number of celestial bodhisattvas become extremely important, most notably Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, Mahastamaprata, and Samantabhadra. And again, none of these names appear in the early texts. They served as ideal models for their earthly counterparts by exhibiting deep compassion and wisdom. The two most popular bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism are Avalokiteshvara and Samantabhadra. Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion and one of the three Pure Land sages, is represented on the right-hand side of Amitabha Buddha when you're looking at the Buddha. Samantabhadra is famous for his 10 great vows, as described in the Avatamsaka Sutra. He is the transcendental first patriarch of the Pure Land school. And then at this point, it gave the story of the parrot, and then a few more notes. Bodhisattvas fear causes. Sentient beings fear effects and results. That's actually very deep. Bodhisattvas, or anyone actually seeking enlightenment, are afraid of causes. They wisely fear causes. Sentient beings fear effects and results. That's really, I love that quote. Bodhisattvas, being wary of evil results, eliminate evil causes. Sentient beings all too often vie to create evil causes and then have to endure evil results. When enduring suffering, they do not know enough to practice repentance, but create more evil karma in the hope of escaping retribution. Thus, injustice and retribution follow upon one another continuously without end. It is so pitiful and frightening to think about it. Then one last note. A bodhisattva's vow. With a sincere mind, the bodhisattva always compares himself to a handicapped person sitting at the crossroads. Although he himself cannot walk, he strives to show others the way, reminding passers-by to avoid the dangerous paths and follow the wide, even, and peaceful way. So the bodhisattva is seen as someone who is so extraordinary, so beyond the ordinary in their compassion, that they give up their own perfect peace to continue in the world, either to become a Buddha to help billions of beings, or to just stay indefinitely to help more and more and more beings. That would be the transcendent bodhisattvas. And then they end up with names, and then there's iconography around them and worship of individual ones of them. In the Theravada, our idea of the bodhisattva, we don't say bodhisattva, we say bodhisatta because that's the Pali pronunciation. Our ideal is that they're very rare and they are very, very different. These are beings who have very extraordinary qualities. In some long distant past life, they will have declared their intention for awakening, and they would have declared it to a living Buddha, who would then look into the future and say, yes, this will happen for you at such and such an occasion. And then for eons and eons and eons, they work to purify their qualities so that they can arise someday as a genius, a spiritual genius with the ability to figure out the underlying causes of suffering and eliminate them and pass the information on to others in a way that they too can overcome suffering. So an example of a bodhisattva that has stayed with me here and now in this modern times, that has stayed with me, is an account from long ago. My teacher, Bhante Ji, was watching the television one time when live camera footage caught the aftermath of a plane crash. This was a very famous crash due to ice weighing down a plane that was taking off, and it crashed into the 14th Street Bridge. And so it hit the bridge and went down into the water. And there was a man who managed to stand on the ice and get up out of that plane, crash in the water, stand on the ice. He's wet and he's cold in sub-freezing weather. A helicopter arrived with, I don't know what to call it, but with a thing that you could grab onto, like a seat you could latch onto and be carried away to safety. It went right to him. Instead of getting on it, he picked up a woman and put her on it. And the helicopter took her away. As soon as it could, it circled back, came to him again. He picked up another woman, put her on it, and the helicopter went away, and it came back. When it got back to him, he was dead from hypothermia. So my teacher, talking about that, declared that was a bodhisattva. When you think of a bodhisattva in Theravada Buddhism, you think of somebody who does something on that level of heroism, with no regard for his own immediate suffering, no regard for his own life. That young man saved 2 women, giving up his life to do it, and suffering. Other people from the plane crash who died, they all died of the injury sustained in the crash. He was the only person who died of hypothermia. So very rare, very special, very unusual. And I've only met 1 or 2 people who said, I am a bodhisattva in Theravada, who fully believe the Theravada path, who declare themselves bodhisattvas. Very unusual. And there's a nun I know who had started in Mahayana, and then understanding Theravada more and more, wanted to give up her bodhisattva vow. And so there was this monk who gave her this whole process of going out into a field. I don't remember what else she did, but doing certain chanting pujas, and then making her declaration that she gives up her past lives bodhisattva vow, because she actually wants to attain enlightenment, like the Buddha said to do. So this is it's a real departure in how enlightenment was approached from the earliest days. In the earliest days, the most devout, not the most devout, the people who were seeking enlightenment would seek enlightenment as a student of the Buddha, as an arhat, attaining awakening based on the teachings of a Buddha. Those who were not ready to actually try to take on those practices would try to improve their karma so the next life would be better, and in some future life maybe become an arhat. But so they're either going to do good deeds and try to go up, or just to have samsara be a little better, to go up, or have a better life in a future human world, or really all out go for it, try to become enlightened, at least to some stage in this life. The Mahayanas branched away from that, really focusing on the historical narrative of the Buddha. He went life after life, perfecting himself. Isn't that a more beautiful thing to do? See how if you're just practicing for yourself, then there's a limitation there. But if what you're actually doing is practicing for the benefit of all beings, it's a higher goal. It actually is a much higher goal, a much more noble intention, that you're going to not try to go for perfect peace and awakening in this life, but do it for everybody else in a future life, and continue on with samsara. I like to say that the Theravada ideally try to do what the Buddha said to do, and the Mahayana ideally try to do what the Buddha did. And the greatest compliment, of course, is imitation. So it's a higher aim. There's a very significant shortcoming, which is the very nature of enlightenment. Enlightenment is not becoming a bigger, better self. Enlightenment is ridding yourself of all your downsides. So wanting to hang on to any of your downsides for any purpose is actually not really ideal, is it? If you think of it that way. And if you really want to give relief to the world, relieve them of your selfishness, your greed, your fear, your worry, your negativity, your enmeshment, your need to control, your all of your downsides. Aside from the downside of the burdens of the body, which we're just all stuck with until the body meets its end. But free of all the downsides of the heart, of the mind. Awakened ones, it said, give a cool, peaceful shelter to other beings, like a great tree. The awakened ones, like a great tree, endure all seasons, and in summer spread out their shade for the comfort of all beings. There's an account in one of our suttas, in the Middle Link discourses, where there were a few monks who had gone to a certain forest retreat place to really intensely meditate. They practiced silence, aside from times that they came together to discuss the Dhamma. And it was said of them that they, I'll back up. So they were living there very peacefully and really practicing intensely. And the Buddha came to visit them. There are actually two suttas like this, because the Buddha visited them twice. On one occasion, they reported to him that they were struggling in their meditations. And he said, oh, well, there are these struggles. And he lists the various struggles that he himself had along the way and how he'd overcome them. The second time, he comes back and he checks on them again. And at that point, they're fully enlightened. Both times, as the Buddha was approaching this secluded place in the forest, it was actually guarded by a kind of park ranger. And he said, halt, recluse, do not disturb the meditating monks. They are practicing for their benefit. And both times Anuruddha overheard it. One of the monks overheard it and said, oh, please don't stop him. He's our teacher. After they'd become fully enlightened, the Buddha declared that anyone who remembers them, these three that had attained enlightenment, it would, whether they're people of this caste or that caste, he goes through this whole list, no matter who they are, no matter what town they're from, no matter their situation, if they remember them, then it'll be to their long-lasting benefit and happiness. And he concluded that these monks had practiced for the welfare of all beings. I don't have the exact words in front of me because it just now occurred to me to mention this account. But in my mind, it perfectly refutes the idea that seeking awakening is for one's own self, or one's own self alone. It is for the benefit of all beings. And the Buddha actually came out right out and said, monks, even as a little bit of blood stinks, even so I do not praise even a moment of becoming. Even as a little bit of dung stinks, so too I do not praise even one moment of becoming. And he goes up all these other foul things, that even just the tiniest bit of it is foul, stinks. Even so, he does not praise even a moment of becoming, meaning one more moment of the mind gathering itself together to say, woohoo, let's keep going. Life after life, let's keep doing this. And that is the very vow of a bodhisattva, to keep becoming. How do you keep becoming? By maintaining some ignorance, by maintaining some greed, by maintaining some conceit, by maintaining some desire to exist. At minimum, that has to be there to have rebirth. That's at minimum. That's these are these final last, and restlessness. Those are final last fetters that bind a being from third stage of enlightenment to full liberation, after which the body passes. There's no more relinking consciousness to get dragged into another life. So the accusation of selfishness for someone who's seeking full awakening in this very life is misplaced. If there were selfishness, that would be obstructive. It would be an obstacle to the full awakening. So I really like these stories of the three parrots. In one, you have in the Theravada, you have the parrot that's going to go the right way, here and now, and the parrot that's negligent. And in the Mahayana, you have the parrot who will stick around no matter what harm it causes himself. In this other telling I gave earlier, even as his feet cracked and his beak was burnt and so forth, that he continued doing these efforts selflessly for all beings. I like how these two stories of three parrots really illustrate for us the difference in the Theravada and the Mahayana models of ideal life and ideal practice.